They say some men ride through life with nothing but dust behind them. No home, no promise, no past worth keeping. Eli Ward was one of those men, a cowboy for hire, a wanderer who traded his strength for shelter and his silence for pay. He came to the Hollow Creek Ranch on a winter morning in 1886, when the sky was pale and cold enough to break. The ranch stretched across miles of dry land, hemmed in by cliffs and wild rivers. Its owner, old Thomas Granger, was a man half blind and half broken by time, but proud enough to keep his land, even as younger, hungrier men tried to take it from him. Eli needed work. Granger needed a man with a steady hand and a quiet tongue. The deal was simple: $50 for the season, food and a bunk in the barn. But what neither man expected was the storm waiting just beyond the horizon, a storm named Beaumont Clay, and the fire he would bring. Eli worked hard. He didn't ask questions, didn't make friends, but every evening, as the sun fell behind the buttes, someone else would appear: Granger's daughter, Clara. She wasn't the kind of beauty you read about in dime novels. She was something quieter, the kind that grew on you like the smell of wild sage after rain. Her hair was the color of wheat, her eyes sharp and restless. She'd lost her mother young, and since then had become her father's strength riding fences, managing cattle, and standing her ground in a world that rarely forgave softness. Eli watched her work with quiet respect. She watched him in return, curious about the man who spoke little but carried a kind of sadness in his eyes that no one dared ask about. One evening, while mending a fence at the edge of the property, Clara brought him water. "You don't talk much," she said. Eli shrugged. Talking never stopped bullets. She smiled at that, though there was something heavy in her gaze, as if she knew men who de-learned that lesson the hard way. From that night on, silence became their language. But Hollow Creek had enemies. Beaumont Clay, a neighboring land baron with a cruel temper and a private army of drifters, had wanted Granger's land for years. Beneath that dusty soil ran a river vein, hidden underground, that could feed thousands of acres. Granger's refusal to sell had made him a target. Eli heard the rumors in town about Clay's men burning barns, poisoning wells, about farmers who vanished after saying no. He told Granger, but the old man only spat tobacco into the dirt. "This land's been in my family since before Clay's daddy was born," he said. "I'll die on it before I hand it over." Eli nodded. He understood that kind of pride. It was the same pride that had once cost him everything. A small homestead in Kansas burned down during a raid, a wife and child who never made it out. That was why he never stayed anywhere too long, because love made men weak, and weakness got you killed. But something about Hollow Creek, about Clara, made him question that old truth. The night it happened, the wind carried a smell of smoke before the fire came. Eli woke to the sound of horses and shouting gunfire, cracking like thunder. Beaumont Clay's men had come. They poured through the ranch gates with torches and rifles, their faces masked with scarves, their eyes wild. Eli grabbed his Winchester, rolled from the bunk, and ran toward the main house. Flames licked the barn roof behind him. The cattle screamed. He saw Clara pulling her father toward the root cellar, her dress torn, her face pale with fear. A bullet struck the ground beside her. Eli didn't think, he just moved. He fired twice, dropping 2 men where they stood, then dragged Clara and the old man behind the stone wall near the corral. Clay himself rode in, tall, lean, with a black coat whipping behind him. His voice carried like poison in the wind. "Old man," he shouted, "you've had your chance. Sell me the land, or I'll salt the ground you stand on." Granger tried to stand, his shotgun trembling in his frail hands. "This land ain't for sale," he roared. Clay raised his pistol, and that's when Eli stepped out from the shadows. The standoff lasted seconds, but in the silence that followed, everything slowed. The flicker of fire, the smell of gunpowder, Clara's terrified breath. Eli fired first. Clay dropped from his horse like a sack of stone, his hat tumbling into the dirt. The rest of his men turned to run, ghosts scattering in the firelight. When it was over, Hollow Creek was half ash, but it was still standing. As dawn broke, Clara found Eli by the river, cleaning his gun. His shirt was torn, his face streaked with soot and blood. "You could have run," she said quietly. "You weren't paid to die for us." Eli looked up at her, the early light catching in his eyes. "Maybe I was tired of running." She smiled, not with joy, but with understanding. In that look, something unspoken passed between them, a promise neither could name. 4 weeks after, they rebuilt together. The ranch rose from ashes, piece by piece. And as they worked, love crept in quietly. Not like thunder, but like the morning sun, steady and warm. Old Granger saw it too. One evening, he called Eli to the porch. "You saved more than this land," he said. "You gave my daughter back her hope. If you want to stay, this place could use a man like you." Eli didn't answer right away. He looked out across the fields, the wind rippling through the grass, the light fading into gold. "I used to think home was a place," he said finally. "Now I think it's a person." Months later, when travelers passed through the valley, they'd sometimes see the new Hollow Creek, a small ranch rebuilt by grit and grace. And if they asked who the quiet man was riding the fences at dusk, the townsfolk would smile and say, "That's Eli Ward, the cowboy they hired to protect the ranch." But truth is, he stayed because of her. They say some men are born wanderers until one day they find something worth staying for. Maybe that's what love really is out here in the wild, not the kind that burns fast, but the kind that endures, like an old fence holding against the storm. Eli Ward rode into Hollow Creek as a stranger, but he stayed as a man who finally found his home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional Wild West stories, mysteries, and forgotten legends. Only on Wild Tales Storytelling.